Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we have Aisha Bowe, who is a former NASA rocket scientist, motivational speaker, and the founder and CEO of STEM Board, a tech company that ranked on the 2020 Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies in America. As an aerospace engineer who started her degree with pre-algebra in a community college, Aisha is on a mission to help youth break stereotypes, stop internalizing false narratives, and pursue careers in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. A serial entrepreneur, Aisha also created Lingo, a self-paced coding kit that empowers students to learn technical concepts at home, complete with online tutorial and support. Lingo kits are a great way to learn the fundamentals of software and hardware engineering concepts. Lingo is currently used by over 4,000 students in America. Prior to founding STEM Board, Aisha worked at NASA's Ames Research Center, where she was an aerospace engineer in the Flight Trajectory Dynamics and Controls branch of the Aviation System Division. Aisha holds a BSE in Aerospace Engineering and an engineer in Space System Engineering from the University of Michigan. I hope you help me to welcome Aisha Bowe.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the glowing introduction. It's truly an honor to be with you all today. While I would like to tell you that I set out to create that type of a biography, I certainly never imagined that I would be here in front of you today talking about my accomplishments as if the path I took was deliberate. The reality is that in the beginning, I had absolutely no idea what it was that I was going to be when I grew up. My father came from the Bahamas to Michigan to pursue his higher education in the 80s. That's where he met my mother, and they happened to have me. Being one of 9 children, my father's family and the culture of the Bahamas became the dominant culture in our family, as my mother was an only child. And one of the things that became really, really clear to me when I was young was that I had a lot of family members who were interested in going abroad from the Bahamas to the UK or to the United States to pursue higher education. And I had parents who, while they loved me and while they were dedicated to providing for me, were just trying to figure themselves out. They weren't sure who they wanted to be, and I wasn't sure who I wanted to be. And we were all kind of in that together. And so growing up, I was insecure. I lacked self-confidence. I was not focused. And quite frankly, I was really shy. And I definitely wasn't interested in anything that we call science, technology, engineering, and math. And this path of not knowing persisted until I was in high school. And to be honest, I wasn't the best high school student. I didn't want to be there. I wasn't somebody who was voted most likely to succeed. I didn't go to class. I skipped a lot of them. Because at that time, my parents' marriage, well, it didn't work out. And that insecurity, that lack of focus, well, that turned into bad grades. And that turned into a student who just wanted to figure out how to survive and not thrive. And so when it came time for me to go to college, I didn't even apply. I ended up at a local community college, not because it wasn't a great place to go, but because it was like the easiest thing for me to do. All I have to do is go to Washtenaw Community College, and I thought I'd figure my life out from there. And even worse, the people around me weren't exactly telling me that I could be great, because there's this commonly held belief that if you don't show aptitude at a young age, then you don't have potential and you're not talented. And I think we all know that that's not necessarily true. There are a lot of things going on in a person's life, whether it will be internally or externally, that can cause them to be unmotivated and can cause them to hold themselves back. Well, when I was in this community college, I ended up running into teachers and students who came from all walks of life. And one of the teachers that I met was a female. She was my math teacher. I was a student taking pre-algebra as an adult. And there's pre-algebra in high school. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with that. I wasn't thinking that I was going to be a genius. I certainly wasn't thinking that I was going to be an engineer, but I was thinking that I was going to try to learn and I was going to apply myself. And what I discovered was that there were a lot of things that I used to hold myself back. And through taking this class and through talking with this woman, I realized that if I just for a moment put aside what I thought was realistic, if I for a moment applied myself to what was ahead of me and not thought too far in the future and not thought too much about the past, I would be able to accomplish the goal that laid in front of me. And for me, that was life-changing because I had never really accomplished anything until I entered this community college environment. And getting an A in that pre-algebra class, well, that changed my life. And that A, well, it turned into an A in calc, and it turned into an A in some other things. And all of a sudden, I, like many of us, was forced to confront a reality of what is it that I could do if I stopped allowing myself to hold me back. And so I decided to do this, become an aerospace engineer, not because I actually thought I could do it, but because I thought that if I'm going to test this theory, right, if I'm going to actually try, if I'm going to suspend all belief and I'm going to put aside what I thought to be realistic and know to be true, why don't I just try to do what people say is a hard thing? Yeah, be a rocket scientist, right? Ha. And I can't tell you how many people laughed in my face. In fact, they still do. When people ask me what I do, when people ask me to tell them where I've been, and I tell them, well, you know, I'm a NASA rocket scientist. I'm a founder. I'm a CEO. They still look at me and they still laugh. But what they don't realize is that in one shape or another, that testimony is about transforming what we perceive to be the blockages in our mind and pushing through. And once I made it out of community college into one of the best aerospace schools in the country, and I found myself working at NASA, I thought, hey, I've arrived. I've conquered all those things. I've conquered my fear of not being good enough. I've conquered feeling as though I wasn't going to add anything to the world. I've made it to the point where I don't have to live with my parents for the rest of my life, which I can tell you was what I thought would be the worst thing at the time, right? I just wanted to have a job and be free. And then I started to look around at the landscape, women in STEM. And I started to realize that a lot of what I thought I had overcome in many ways was just starting, because there really weren't a lot of women who looked like me. There really weren't a lot of women who were motivated to be engineers. And while a lot of what I've done as of late is entrepreneurship, it came from being an engineer and not really feeling like there was a pathway for someone to be me. Because when I looked back, I said, hey, you know what, Aisha, a lot of Black women have never seen a rocket scientist. They don't know who the role models are in the field. And neither did I. When I set out to be an aerospace engineer, I wasn't saying, oh, I want to be like Aisha Bowe, because a lot of the rocket scientists or the astronauts, they're not actually engineers. They might be doctors or scientists. And so during the 6 years that I spent at NASA, I worked on a lot of great things. I had the opportunity to meet the administrator who actually came out to give me an award. I had an opportunity to work near the 6 degrees of motion vertical simulator and see what it took to deliver world-class technologies to astronauts globally. But all along the path, I started to notice little things that I would like to change, that I thought could be done better if the world was going to create more people like me, if the world was going to find a way to inspire not only the traditional, but the non-traditional to engage, because we need more scientists, we need more engineers, and we need more entrepreneurs so that we can have solutions that are designed for the many as opposed to the few. And when I really started to think about this, I was looking around industry and I said, I thought that this was what it was going to be like. I thought that I was going to go into NASA and all of the trials and tribulations I had had as a student would in some way disappear. And that I would be surrounded by all of these beautiful Black women, heck, women of all nationalities solving really hard problems. But really, when I went into industry, it was a little bit more like this. And I'm sure that some of you guys have probably had this experience. It was mostly what you would expect. And as a result, the outcome of that thought process from that group of people was more of the same. But I wasn't convinced to do anything about it until I met this young girl. And her name is Claire. And on the left-hand side, there's a young me and Claire. She was about 13, and I ran into her when I was giving a motivational speech, you could say, for young women in aerospace at a local aviation museum. And she came up to me and she said, "Hey, Aisha, I think I want to be an aerospace engineer." And I was like, "Hey, okay, little lady, send me an email and we can talk." But see, as a 23-year-old, I didn't see myself as part of a solution. I didn't see myself as empowered. I didn't see myself as somebody that could really mentor anybody else. I was literally just getting started. Well, Claire didn't see me that way. She sent me an email and she said, "Hey, I want to come in and I want to see what NASA's like." And so I ran to my boss and I said, "Can we have minors visit?" They told me yes. As long as I talked to the parents. The parents said yes. And we were off. And what I thought would be a one-day encounter ended up being a mentorship relationship that I still have to this day. It's a relationship where I thought that I was mentoring her, but really she was mentoring me. And today, she's an aerospace engineer. She's a graduate, and she's working at Blue Origin on the cusp of human spaceflight. And she said to me, and I'll never forget, she said, "Aisha, I never doubted that I could be an aerospace engineer because you were one." And in that moment, I said, I have to leave my job. I have to get out of here. I'm going to leave my government job and I'm going to figure out how I'm going to replicate this and how I'm going to scale this. And how it is that I'm going to create a business out of nothing, even though I'd never seen anybody do that before. Even though I didn't know if I could do it. It was like when I started off in life, I was insecure. I wasn't necessarily focused. I didn't have any money, but everything turned out okay, right? So that was going to be my starting point, the uncomfortable. And I really, when I looked around, I was scared because the news wasn't encouraging. There were all of these headlines about how for Black women, it's so hard, how we weren't being funded, how we weren't being invested in. And I wasn't sure that I could be the one that could break through that. I didn't know if I was actually going to make it, but I was determined to try and put aside the fear. And initially, I wasn't successful. I had a couple of pros, 2 exactly that I can remember. I was passionate about finding a way to combine my love for technology and empowering people. That I had going for me. And 2, I was in San Francisco, where I was surrounded by all these entrepreneurs who were also starting from scratch. And a lot of them had really big egos, and their resumes were not as long as mine. And what I realized was that even though I was broke, I was scared, I wasn't sure what product I was going to offer, and I didn't have any employees, and I had no idea where to find employees. Well, maybe that wasn't a bad thing. So I started to kind of look through how people traditionally trained entrepreneurs. I looked at blogs, I looked at websites, I looked at business books, but it really didn't work for me. None of these things worked for me. I read about people's failures. I kept failing. I talked to entrepreneurs who'd gotten lucky breaks. I didn't find any lucky breaks. I didn't have anything that I felt really was clicking. But as much as I did not feel like I was benefiting from this traditional process, I actually was, because I was learning what didn't work for me. And what didn't work for me was equally as important as learning what did and what does. And so we're going to transition here into a more interactive part of the presentation. In the chat, there's a link to Menti, and I want you guys to get ready because I want you to pop in some words about what makes you unique and what makes you special. Because when I hit the wall after leaving NASA, not having a job and not knowing how I was going to start a business, I really thought that I lost my way. But what I had to do was the hard work of reflecting on what unique skills and talents made me me. I had to examine my weak spots. I had to identify what my passions were. And I had to research how all of these things combined into what society valued and how these potential contributions could actually become a business. And so I want you to think about this. And I'm going to transition over to the poll where we can see what people say in response. But I want you to go to www.menti.com and use the code on the slide and tell me the answer to the first question, which is, what skills or qualities do you have that make you unique? Because starting here was the beginning of my success. This became what I used to form the business that would eventually be what you heard today. The business that allowed for me to become an entrepreneur that was recognized by Inc. and serves over 4,000 students in the span of a year worldwide. Because I started to understand what it was that made me unique. So if you could, take a moment, go into Menti, and put down a few words. Are you thoughtful? Are you strategic? Are you a great planner? Are you great with finances? Are you somebody who someone goes to when they have a crisis and they really need to find an answer to the questions? Are you personable, like one of our respondents put in, which is great? All of these things are important to go through because once you have an idea of what makes you good, you can leverage them to become great. I would like to thank who put in that they were a visionary, because visionary leadership is what's behind a lot of being a CEO. CEOs are also inspiring. They manage crises. Absolutely. I think I manage a crisis almost every day. They're analytical. Absolutely. They're a good listener. I love that. Whoever added that, I love that, because oftentimes leadership is not necessarily about leading. It's about knowing when to follow. Time management, that's key. We all have the same 24 hours in the day as Beyonce, as I like to say, and she finds a way to get almost everything done. And we can too, if we're judicious about how we spend our time. Being empathetic, that resonates. When I started, I thought that being vulnerable was a bad thing. But now that vulnerability is what I lean on in order to lead effectively. I'm not afraid to tell people when I'm not okay, because it gives them space to express their gifts and their values. And that expression makes me and my organization better. Really, thank you for the contributions. We're going to go back to the presentation, and then we're going to come back just a little later for one last poll. For me, the light bulb moment was engineering and outreach. I was spending all this time hoping that somebody would invest in me, when in actuality, I had two skills that I could use to invest in myself. And I applied these skills to the Bahamas, which is where my family came from, and which is where earlier on I mentioned that I saw a lot of need. I saw that the same engineering education that I had access to in the US, because my dad chose to educate me in the US, was one that my cousins didn't have. And so I created a STEM camp And at first I thought there's no way that anybody was going to pay me to do this. But I was wrong. Through a series of public and private partnerships, we created the largest free tech camp for public and private school students that operated for 6 years up until the pandemic. And it allowed hundreds of students to come and work with my engineering team to build startups that could in one way enhance an element of life in the Bahamas. And this all came out of me deciding that I was going to invest in myself. I was going to combine the two things that I felt that made me unique, and I was going to offer that to the world. And when I started, people thought, no way, Aisha, there's no way that anyone's going to pay you to do that. There's no way that this is going to be successful. But now this is a core line of my business. And I have spoken to nearly a dozen countries on behalf of the United States State Department about this mission. And it's something that isn't just unique to me. You can do it too. You can figure out how to take your skills and your passions and use them to transform the world around you to a better place, a place that's more inclusive and a place that reflects your values. So let me talk briefly about the impact of the pandemic on education, because this was an area that really caused me to change my life. And I thought, hey, all of the life change was going to happen, in the first 5 years of the business. There's no way that I'm just going to stop and suddenly change direction. But the pandemic caused that, because those very same skills and camps that were created in the first slide, well, the students had a need. And what they needed was for us to leave something behind, because we would come for a week and they would have a great time. And then we would have to go. And the question became, well, what next, right? Okay, what next, Aisha? And so we created this box, a self-paced coding kit, so that after we left, they could continue to tinker. And this is what the first iteration of this box looked like. It was me and Danielle, who's on my team, and a couple other people. And we said, we're going to create this box, and we're going to leave it with you. And we hope that you like it. Well, when the pandemic took a turn for this is really happening in April of last year, I said to my team, if we're going to be at home, we should give this box to as many people as we can find. And with that, we decided to create a product. And I had been a services CEO up until then. And I think you guys can appreciate that services and product are two totally different business models. But I didn't care. I said, you know what? This is going to be like every other time in my life when I didn't feel confident, but I did it anyway. And when I didn't necessarily have the funding and I didn't necessarily have the support, but I was going to do it anyway. And that's what we did. We created Lingo, a self-paced at-home coding kit that helps students learn the fundamentals of hardware and software with culturally relevant role models for a change. That's right. For what would be the first time for many students, they could learn from Black women computer science concepts. And whether you were a minority student or not, it didn't really matter. Because if you were, you got to see somebody who looked like you. And if you weren't, you had an opportunity to normalize who was in the field. Well, this little box and this little passion project turned into over 4,000 students in just America using Lingo. We have students in the United Kingdom. We have students in South Africa. We have students in Israel. We have students in Jamaica. We have students in the Bahamas. And we have students all over Canada who also use our kits. That's right. In 1 year, this little project turned into something I never could have even dreamed that it turned into, because I had the courage to simply put aside the fears and to try. And today I'm still nervous about this, right? We're still getting started. I've never been a product CEO. I've never had a product that's been on a major retailer, but now we're on Amazon, we're on Walmart, and we're on Target. And now I'm learning every single day all the stuff I don't know, but I'm reading the Amazon reviews. I'm learning that there's communities out there that support me and that need this. And every single day I get up and I check the reviews and I see that there's somebody that bought that for the grandson and they loved it, or is a new learner and wanted to buy something that they could tinker with and they love it. And I'm realizing that the limitations that we have truly are those that are in our mind. So before we get into the question and answer, I want to hear from you for one last time in this presentation. I told you a lot about what was holding me back, but now I want you to share, and this is anonymous, what do you believe is holding you back? Is it a lack of confidence? Do you feel like maybe you're an imposter? Are you uncertain about your future direction? What is it that's holding you back? We're going to go to Menti and type in the 4373. And then I'm going to restart the share with the poll page so that you can see it. And we already have some responses. Fear of failing. Yeah, I resonate with that. I feel that all the time. In fact, I felt it this morning, but that's something you can manage through positive self-talk, through affirmations, through reconditioning your brain to hear that stimulus, but to ignore it. A job that pays the bills. I hear you. I thought that leaving NASA, there'd be no way that I would ever be able to make ends meet. But I realized that holding on to what I had actually was what was setting me back. And if I was just willing to live the time in between of the uncertainty and the realization of the goal, I would be so much better off. Financial security, financial standing, money capacity, and resources. I love this because I'm here to tell you that I'm not sure that it's money that really holds us back. Because I didn't have the money, I was forced to be lean. I was forced to determine what people would buy from me. What value was I driving as a CEO? And I'll tell you, because I didn't have the money, I learned graphic design, I learned accounting, I learned how to give presentations, I learned what I would be asking people to do, and I learned how to evaluate proposals that I was paying for. And this is what's made me more successful today than ever, because I talk to CEOs who don't know how to read a balance sheet because they had so much money that they always paid somebody. I talk to CEOs who don't know whether or not what they're doing is actually feasible because they've always paid somebody. And so while I understand that a lack of funding may at first seem like an insurmountable barrier, I would encourage you to look at that as a challenge to get involved and get started. Look at what services you can buy as a commodity on the internet. There's a lot of freelancing sites, Upwork, Elance, Dribbble. You can find artists that can work for you for nominal funds, whether it's graphic design, legal formation is now outsourced, LegalZoom. There are all these tools. But before you decide to pay for something, I really encourage you to explore whether it's something you can do, or whether it's something you can barter with another colleague to do, or whether it's something that you can pay someone to do for you on a short-term basis. Fear of success. That's a big one. Sometimes it's not that we think that we can't do it. We're afraid of what it will bring to us. And for me, that fear of success, in many ways, it's manifested itself. I would love to tell you that becoming successful has made me the most popular person in my family, but it is not. It, in many ways, it drives division, it creates wedges, it can make you feel alone. But every day when I wake up, and I look at the fact that I do what I love to do every single day, that I am making a mark on this world, that I am leaving an impact and a legacy that is about more than me, but it's about empowering women. It's about empowering women of color. It's about changing how people view stereotypes when it comes to CEOs and businesses and who runs them. That's when that fear goes away, because I look at the impact of the work. Thank you guys for being candid. I love the results in this poll. And the reality of it is that all of these fears, in one way or another, they're not founded. You can and you can't overcome all of them, because most of them are fears that I've had And without any rich uncles, without any funding, without having a business degree, without knowing how I was going to do it, and even to this day, without knowing where I'm going, I've still managed to create and grow a 7-figure business that has entered into retail, and you can do it too. So let's round out the presentation so we can get to the part that I enjoy the most, which is talking with you about your businesses and your questions. I'm going to leave you guys with a couple tips for becoming successful, which I'm sure that many of you guys have thought about. But the first thing is take the risk. Just take the risk. If it's not today, when is it? When is it, right? Why wait? You have come so far in life. You've done so much. Some of you are mothers. Some of you are daughters. Some of you are carrying your whole family. If you can do all those things, if you can get these degrees, if you can work for some of the most elite and prestigious companies in the world, you can bet on yourself. I promise you, you will always win. And the last couple things, learning from your mistakes. I love this because I'll be the first to tell you, I used to take these criticisms personally growing up. I used to be so offended. You're going to criticize me or my product or my company? Well, the heck with you. I don't need you. But I'll tell you a small story about Lingo. When we first created the box, it was too small. And I got all this feedback from our client base that they had a really hard time putting the kit back into the box. And at first I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure I'm really open to hearing this. It's going to be a whole redesign. But the reality of it was I went into a school and I taught the kit and it really was too small. And parents and teachers couldn't allow for the students to store their projects in the interim, and they needed that space. So I went back and I executed an entire redesign of the kit. I learned from the complaint. And that's how we got into retail, because I finally listened to a criticism that was constructive and that allowed for me to make a better product. And by making a better product and learning my customer, doors opened and more opportunity came from it. So last but certainly not least, and I know a lot of you guys know this, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this in the chat. But as you get started, learn your market, do your research, write your plan, not necessarily because you think your plan is going to succeed. I'll tell you, I've had a lot of plans in life that just failed as soon as I started, but planning is important. It allows you to structure your thoughts. It allows you to prioritize. It allows you to begin to understand what is involved in solving the problem. And that's important. Pick your location, which today it's great. You don't have to pick a specific one. You can be everywhere. I'm at home. I'm in my kitchen, but hey, I'm in Bermuda. I'm all over the place. Choose your business name, register your business, and think about federal and state tax IDs. I mention this because these IDs actually end up becoming very important as you begin to scale. There are so many things that I didn't realize that were tied into all of these things, like me being able to register for a barcode, me becoming a brand registry on Amazon because I own the trademark for my company, because I had the right IDs and the right registrations. But these are just a few of the things for you guys to think about. Undoubtedly, there are more, and I'm looking forward to hearing some in the Q&A. Thank you, and I look forward to staying connected. For those of you who are unable to chat with me during today's call, I encourage you to reach out to me. This is my Instagram. And if anything, send me your success. I would love to highlight you and your businesses because truly, when you win, we all do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha. What a wonderful presentation. I'm sure the ladies got so much out of that. We have the chat has been blowing up with some great responses. Ladies, if you do have a question for Aisha, please put it in the question and answer. There's a Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Hopefully we can get some questions in there. And then I'm going to read some of the chat while we're waiting for those questions to come in. But one of the things, I mean, like I said, I listened to your story on a Facebook, a little clipping, and just listening to your story and hearing it again, one of the comments was how you start isn't always how you finish. And I think that's very important to note, just hearing what you had to say. And then another one, and a coworker said this a long time ago, invest in yourself. Andrea Rochester, one of my colleagues, she always says it, invest in yourself. This is your business. This is your life. This is something you're doing for yourself. Working for someone else, working in your own business, you have to make that investment. So it's just great to hear people reiterate it. You hear it once and then people highlight it again. And it's so great just to, continue to hear those words. And so while we're waiting for the question and answer, if anyone has any question and answer, please pop it in the chat. Make sure you're utilizing the platform and looking at the speaker pages and reading the bio, checking out the speakers. But we're just going to go through some of this. So it says, thank you for sharing your story. Very inspirational from Velda. Connect, love this presentation, love your story. I am a big STEM advocate. So I will be share your story with my STEM nonprofit inspiring. Tika said inspirational. Queena said thank you, Aisha. Great steps add step strategic management and development during the market research step 1 phase. Charlena, great advice. Thank you. Maria, if you can't pay for it to be done, learn to do it yourself or partner with someone who might do a service exchange or will take payment for short-term services. And then barter is ideal and outsourcing too. Many don't use the barter system, but I do. Oh yes, when you aim for success and to be better, there will be haters, but in your own family and friends, be prepared for that on all levels. And Kalisha says, lack of confidence, fear to fail. I think that was the answer to one of your questions of what's holding you back. And Michelle said, fantastic, what a game changer. Putting tech in the hands of our future, no limits. Tika Gilbert said, this is awesome. There are plenty hands up. Someone said in another panel, turning challenges into change. Joy said, wow, awesome. Dave, our tech in the back said, brilliant. Eureka giving her hands up. Innovative, combine the things that make you unique and invest in yourself. And that's some of the things I took earlier. Investing in self will lead to investing in others. And Dave also said, we need more women faces as role models. So many COVID success stories where women are reaching new heights. While I need to invite you to my Empowered Girls STEM nonprofit in North Carolina, I believe. Okay, yes, corporate America, white male dominated, amen, mentors, representation, mentors. Regina said, the promise that how you start, well, yeah, that's what I said earlier. I really like that, Regina. The promise that how you start isn't always how you finish. So we do have a question, so let me go to that. Michelle White, oh my gosh, listening to your story and journey is inspiring. What is next for you? Have you reached your purpose?
I have not reached my purpose. I had the fortune in 2019 of agreeing to speak on behalf of the State Department in South Africa. And while I was there, together we gave over 40 talks in several locations, but there's one that really struck me. It was a high school in the same area that the only 2 Nobel laureates on Earth are born in. It's called Soweto, right? 2 of the most brilliant people in the world came from one of an incredibly impoverished area. And in this room, it was standing room only. It was a school. They only had a cafeteria. And I had a girl get up and she said, Aisha, I really enjoyed your story. I really enjoyed your journey, but I need you to think bigger. You're thinking too small. You're thinking about the impact and the change that you can affect in America. But in many respects, the rest of the world, we're just trying to catch up. And so I need you to go home and I need you to think about how you can be global, how you can make it so that women and children all over the world, especially persons of color, get an opportunity to see a model that they can emulate. It's not that we're all going to be you, but it's that we all need to understand that we are empowered to change the world around us because somebody of similar circumstance has done this, therefore we can do it too. And that's what's next. It's me figuring out how I can become one of the only minority-owned and operated educational toy companies in the world to be a multinational. It's me figuring out how I take this company and I scale it and have it join my other enterprises that are service, and how we as engineers and entrepreneurs become public figures so that our children can emulate what success looks like. Because you can't do it if you can't define it, and all you see are entertainers.
You're muted, Colina. Colina, you're muted.
Sorry, I heard it in the background. I'm like, what am I hearing? So the question that we have, any suggestions for where to go for software development with ideas? i.e., if you have an idea that can be solved with software, but not a techie, what do you suggest?
If you have an idea that can be solved with software, but you're not technical, I would encourage you to find a technical co-founder. You can do this through several ways. Oftentimes there are entrepreneurship incubators, local community groups. Get involved in startups and kind of like the startup networks in your area, as well as, get online. Because the reality of it is that there are a lot of technical people who know how to solve challenging problems, but they may not have one. They may not be creative. And so they need to join with you who has that vision, that understands that problem, and they can leverage their talents in order to meet your goal. So I know that it's not like a specific place, but I promise you, the more that you get out and you start broadcasting what it is that you're hoping to achieve, you can attract people that have the talents to bring it to you. So get onto your network, right? Put it on your Facebook, put it on your Instagram, put it on your LinkedIn, that you're looking for a technical co-founder and that you have an idea. Research what startup meetups and things of that nature are around or you have access to online. Maybe it's a startup Zoom, and let people know what your idea is or enough of the idea that you feel comfortable sharing, and see who comes and who wants to be part of your mission. Because a lot of this is about passion, and having people who are attracted to your vision is what helps to propel it further.
And we have Francia that said the shift to expand product for the business due to COVID was innovative. Leah Dean said, great presentation. Thank you, Aisha. And then we have, wow, Tarlina, mesmerized by the conversation. Maria said, you can't do it if you can't define it. Jody said, how do you interact with those expecting you to fail?
I kind of have to laugh, right? Because the number of people who expect me to fail far outweighs the number of people that expect me to succeed. So at this point in time, I feel like if you expect me to fail, I'm probably doing something right? I don't take it personally. A lot of people's opinions of what you can do are limited by what they think they can do. And so it's just something where if you hear it, take it as a step in the right direction, right? You're on the right path if somebody's expecting for you to fail. I think, Colina, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Yes, there are two questions. What's your suggestions to get started with Target, Amazon, etc., retailing? What are tips?
Such a good question. I'm going to tell you that the views I'm about to express are mine and mine alone, not that of my company. I think that retail is not what people would like for you to think it is, most often than not, because when you are on a retailer like Target or Walmart, there's a percentage of your product, of your profit, of your hard-earned work that they want just to have your product on there. And it's not nominal. Although many may consider it to be a badge of maturity, and it may allow you access to a wider market, I think it's really important to think about if retail really meets your end goal. It's possible to be on Amazon and have your own page, and I may even recommend that because you've spent all this time and energy investing into yourself and your business. Do you really want to give away 40% to somebody else just so that you can say you're on Walmart or Amazon? Maybe, maybe not. So for me, we have a really big B2B business. I love it. The 4,000 boxes, those are direct sales to parents, to teachers, to schools. That was me just showing that we could move as much weight as somebody who was on Amazon and Walmart. And guess what? Keep 100% of the profit. But now that I have both, I would suggest to everybody, have both. Have a direct sales channel and make sure that you have a direct sales channel that allows you to engage, that allows people to be with you. But I wouldn't necessarily put all of your eggs in just one basket.
Okay, great. We have Connect that's asked, are you open to speak globally, in person, or virtually to young girls to discuss STEM? How do we contact you? I think you're on mute, Aisha. Oh, okay.
This is what happens when you think you're good at Zoom and then the screen changes. So my apologies.
Are you able to type your contact details, or we can put it in the chat, or if you send me an email, we can send it to our audience as well?
Absolutely. So the best way to contact with me right now is on Instagram. My email inbox is totally, and it's just a disaster right now. As you guys can imagine, it's the holiday season and we're in retail and there's a lot of stuff going on in Q4. And for me, this is the first time that I've had to adjust to it, but I get these messages directly and I'm happy to engage. I also, Kalina, I'll provide you with another way to contact me, which is to go through my website, aishabowe.com, and those come into my Gmail box, and I would be happy to engage from there.
Okay, great. We have two more questions. Dave asks, what was the greatest challenges working with large retailers and scaling in general?
I think the greatest challenge for me has been actually maybe like two, right? The first is understanding that we needed to get into the mind of the consumer at home. So creating a bunch of different brand personas and imagining who would buy the product, how they would use it, and what they would need. A lot of testing occurs in this process. You have to get a lot of people in the room who think differently than you, and that's key. Because you're going to have one view and that view may not be right. And you don't want to find that out when you're live and when you're on a large retailer, because that may not help you drive sales. The other piece is just anticipating the product needs, fronting orders. You have purchase orders for hundreds of boxes and those things need to go out. Being able to put together a pitch deck that would allow somebody to pick you up. They're just all of these little things that come into play, and that's a topic that I would be happy to advise on. If there was one takeaway from this presentation that I would really encourage you to explore, is to look at who the reputable distributors are. When I made the choice, I didn't make a choice necessarily to go directly with the store. I made the choice to power with a powerful distributor, one who is reputable, who dealt with all of the stores, who could hold my hand and my company's hand along the way and educate me because it was in their interest too. So if you're thinking about this, look at the distributors. And if you don't know who they are, ask the store. They'll tell you who their distributors are because they pride themselves in those vendor relationships. And if you get picked up by one of those guys, they can help shepherd you the rest of the way.
Okay, and we have Delight that said, thank you so much for acknowledging constructive criticism is a gift. It's like having your own quality control department, but free. How do you move beyond emotion or ego to addressing and implementing?
Yeah, I think understanding that if you can put your ego aside and look at yourself objectively in all areas of your life, it only benefits you. You're only getting in the way of your own progress by putting up a wall. And while it may hurt, the things that often hurt you are actually the things that have some truth to them. Oftentimes when people say something to you and it's nonsensical, you just brush it off. But if it kind of tingles and if it stays with you, well, then evaluate it. Now, that's not to say that all feedback is constructive, and there's a framework for looking at whether or not the feedback is constructive, but use your gut. We, especially as women, have powerful intuition, and we kind of know whether or not something has a ring of truth to it. And in your private time, I would encourage you to explore it. I spent too many years getting in my own way, and now I'm happy to step aside and get out of it.
Okay, great. We have a new that said, brilliant and beautiful presentation. Keontae said, awesome presentation. Connect. Agree to those people who expect me to fail. It reminds me to keep doing better. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. And then we have our last question, and that is from Joyce Hayward. She said, any suggestions if you have any idea that can be solved with software and are not techie, who or what do you suggest?
Yes, I think this is a repeat of the earlier question about finding a technical co-founder. But I will emphasize here, do take a look at those who are out there, who are part of existing startups, who may be part of entrepreneurial spaces in your area, and just get involved. I was surprised by how many technical people I ran into in the early days of being in California and going to meetups. There's no shortage of people with ideas and the desire to try something new. It may not necessarily pan out, but people are often getting together and talking about ideas. And by injecting yourself in that process, you're certain to find somebody that can become your co-conspirator and maybe even a co-founder.
Okay, and we have one last question. Once you left full-time working with government, how long did it take for you to feel in your new space?
About 3 years. That's right, it was 3 years. This is not an overnight success story. It took 3 years of me wandering around in the dark trying to find the light switch. But when I found the switch, it was great. And really, when I think about it, it's almost like getting a master's. It's analogous to the same time frame. It wasn't that we weren't making money. It was that I wasn't making enough money, right? So we'd started generating revenue. But the key thing was that I didn't leave my job. I didn't just hop out and decide that I was going to quit cold turkey and not have some revenue coming in. I got up earlier. I stayed later. I had a way where I could make meet basic needs and then invest the rest of my time into what I was doing. And so for those of you who feel that financials are, hampering your prospective journey, I would encourage you to think about not quitting your day job immediately, growing it, because the business will get to the point where it will tell you when you need to leave. This idea of, oh, I'm just going to raise $1 million and go out and, create $1 billion on a dream may be the reality of some, but I'll tell you, it's the few. It's not commonly people who look like me or you. And by having something that had traction and that had value, I now get to be in a place of power when I talk to people about whether or not they can play with the business, whether or not they can invest in me. And trust me, you want that. You ever see Shark Tank? They always want 60%. They want too much. And I'm sitting here thinking, there's no way I'm giving up 20% of my company for less than $100,000. But I can say that. I can do those things because I have traction. I have a balance sheet. I have product sales. I have retail. And so that's what you're missing out if you don't hold the course and just go through that uncomfortable period and take the time to really, use some of your money to build up some traction before you engage with others about potential investment.
All right, thank you so much, Aisha, for coming with us, taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak to us ladies. We have definitely been inspired and empowered by your conversation. I'm sure that everyone has something to take away from your presentation and just looking forward to connecting with you in the future. We are halfway throughout our full day of our Women's Entrepreneurship Day conference, and we still have a lot going on this afternoon. We have our tech panel coming up. We have our branding panel coming up. We also have our pitch competition. So you're going to listen to some other amazing women that are starting a business, and you, the attendees, get to vote on whose business will be first, second, and third. We also have our Female Entrepreneur of the Year, which was a poll done, and she will get an award during the presentation. and then we will have some prizes, a closeout by the U.S. Consul, and then we will have some networking and a vendor market later on. So you don't want to miss out. Hope that you continue to stick around. Like I said, we have some amazing prizes coming up. I'll just let you know that one of the grand prize is a hotel stay. So make sure that you stick around to be able to win. And next up, we have the Women in Tech panel. And so if you if you look at your schedule, click on the link, that will be starting at 2:00. So you have a couple minutes to jump over, get up, stretch, move around, and then join us. Also, make sure that if you're posting pictures or anything on social media, tag BEDC and tag SHEQONOMI, as well as there are chat features in the platform where you can talk to people, you can start conversations. You can also go around to the vendor booths, sponsors booths, and the speaker booths. There will be points for anybody who visits those booths, and we will be doing calculations in the end for prizes. So thank you, ladies, for continuing to stick with us so far. Thank you, Aisha and Jody, for joining us, and also Camille Haley that works for our U.S. consulate, who gave me your name. So enjoy the rest of your day, ladies. I will be hopping over to the next session and hope to see you there. Bye, everyone.